The goblin kept 3 ledgers. One was for loot, spears, helmets, mail shirts, anything that could be counted and stacked and argued over. One was for meat, goats taken, horses fallen, comrades who would not be eating again, and thus did not count against rations. The last was the thin one, the one he never showed the orcs. That was for things which did not make sense. It was nearly full. Ricket Ledger Heir, quartermaster of Grashnak, the Grey Tusks siege camp, had been told this would take a week. The word had come the way good intelligence always came, through 4 mouths, each one credible, each one unconnected to the last. A goblin scout who had seen the sick carts himself. A dwarven trader who had sold medicine to a human runner out of Thornwall 3 weeks prior, twice the usual quantity. A traveling merchant who reported the garrison's outer patrols had shortened their routes, the way patrols shortened when there were not enough healthy legs to walk the full circuit. A dark elf cartographer who noted in passing that Thornwall's supply requisitions, usually filed at the Greywood way station each month, had not arrived. 4 sources, 4 angles, all pointing the same direction. Grashnak had not needed much convincing. Thornwall sat at the edge of the Greywood like a splinter in a thumb, blocking 3 trade routes the Grey Tusks wanted and making the southern approach to the Flatstone Run complicated for every raiding band that worked the region. Taking it had always been a question of cost. A healthy garrison made the cost too high. A sick one, undermanned and undersupplied, changed the arithmetic entirely. Ricket had done the arithmetic. A week, perhaps 9 days if the humans had more fight in them than expected. He had provisioned accordingly, because provisioning for longer cost weight and coin the warband did not want to carry. He had felt good about the work. Clean numbers, clean plan, clean outcome. That was before day 8. He had noticed the repair crews first. They changed shift faster than a sick garrison should manage. He logged it in the thin ledger and told himself it meant nothing. 1 data point. Camps had good days and bad days. Then the arrow rate held flat through day 9. Illness did not plateau. It curved downward always. Flat meant healthy. Flat meant someone had been counting how many arrows a sick garrison was supposed to loose per day, and hitting that number deliberately. Not because they were struggling, but because they were performing struggle for an audience sitting in a ditch. Ricket had stared at that column for a long time. On day 10 he ran the human supply numbers for the first time, which he should have done before the siege started, and had not, because the rumor had seemed so clean and well sourced. Full strength garrison. He used the most generous estimate of their stores, the one that made his own position look best. He ran it twice. A month. Thornwall had a month of fighting strength. Perhaps more. He ran his own numbers next. 11 days of food left in camp at current consumption. He checked it again, hoping he had carried something wrong. He had not. Ricket sat in his tent for a long time after that, listening to orcs argue over dice outside, and thought about what a man could do when he discovered he had walked into a room and the door had been locked behind him before he arrived. He could tell Grashnak. Grashnak would ask how the quartermaster had built a siege on bad intelligence, and Ricket would have to explain that he had trusted 4 sources without asking who those 4 sources had spoken to before passing the word along, and Grashnak would make a decision about Ricket's continued usefulness that Ricket did not want made. He could say nothing and hope the numbers resolved themselves. They would not. Numbers did not resolve. They accumulated. He could begin quietly packing his personal kit. He chose the third option and told himself it was temporary, while he thought of a better one. There was no better one. Each morning he looked at the walls and tried to find the seam in it, the place where the humans had overreached or miscalculated. He did not find one. The rumor had been architected. The sick carts had been rolled out for a merchant who was known to talk and who had reached orc territory on schedule. The reduced arrow rate in the first week had been performed for him specifically, calibrated to match what a competent siege quartermaster would expect from a garrison in decline. Somewhere inside Thornwall was a human who had modeled goblin and orc siege logistics, calculated the exact flavor of weakness needed to commit a war band to a siege it could not outlast, seeded 4 separate and apparently independent sources with the same story, and then sat behind the walls and waited for them to arrive. He wrote in the thin ledger, "They chose us." They chose when? They chose who. We thought we were hunting. He watched the lamps on the parapet each night after that. They were spaced at infuriating equal intervals, one from the next, regular as a heartbeat. He had logged them early in the siege as evidence of a garrison struggling to maintain the appearance of strength. He now understood that the spacing was not about visibility. It was about regularity. It was about looking exactly as disciplined on day 11 as day 1, so that a goblin with a ledger would keep writing, stable, holding pattern, when he should have been writing, full strength, rested, waiting. He closed the thin ledger and went to sleep on top of his packed kit. Day 12 arrived cold and grey, the kind of morning that felt like an ending. The camp was loose. It had been tightening into looseness the way sieges always did when the expected collapse kept not arriving and the food shortened and the orcs ran out of things to break. Raiders had drifted off foraging. The forward trench was understaffed. Grashnak's inner circle had stopped sharpening weapons and started sharpening arguments about whose fault the delay was. No one was afraid. You did not fear a counterattack from a sick garrison behind a wall. That was the comfort of a siege. The wall kept them in. The wall kept you safe. Ricket was behind his tent adjusting the straps on his pack when the shouting started. He came around the corner and looked toward Thornwall. The gate was open, not splintering open the way it would under pressure from inside. Open cleanly, both halves swung wide and deliberate, the way you opened a gate when you chose to open it. And from that darkness, walking at an easy pace, came a single horse under a white flag. The camp stirred. Orcs rose from fires, nudging each other, grinning. This was the moment. The wall had broken. The humans were sending out their surrender. Grashnak emerged from his tent with his arms wide and his tusks bright, the posture of a war chief receiving what was owed to him. Ricket watched the horse. Something was wrong with the rider. Wrong proportion, wrong silhouette against the grey sky. Too small in the shoulders. Too short in the leg. He squinted, and his goblin eyes, better than any orca's at distance, focused and found the detail and stopped. The rider's hands were tied to the saddle horn, and the rider was a goblin, not a human in goblin colors, not a human at all, a goblin. One of their own missing scouts by the look of the vest, sitting upright on a trained human horse, with wrists bound to the leather, and the white flag fixed to a pole strapped across the back, flying above a head that was kept carefully still, because the horse would keep walking whether the rider guided it or not. The horse walked at the same unhurried pace. The flag flew steady. Around it the orcs went quiet in a spreading ring as the wrongness reached them one by one. Grashnak's arms were still wide. His grin had not moved, but his eyes had gone to the rider and stayed there with an expression Ricket had never seen on a warchief's face, the expression of a very large creature that has just noticed the ground is not where it was a moment ago. Ricket's legs made a decision. He was moving before he knew it, pack already on his back, cutting through the edge of camp toward the tree line. Behind him he heard the gate open fully, not the small opening a single horse required, but the full gate. Both halves all the way you opened it when what was coming through needed room. He heard the cavalry come out. He heard the forward trench discover what a garrison that had been resting behind walls for 12 days looked like when it finally decided to move. He did not look back. A quartermaster's instinct, when the numbers go catastrophic, you do not stay to watch the columns fill. He ran until the trees swallowed him, until the sounds of the camp became formless noise behind the leaves, until his legs gave him the hill he needed and let him stop. He stopped. He turned. Below him the rout was already complete in everything but the formality. The human cavalry had split into two clean lines the moment they cleared the gate, curling around the flanks of the camp with the spacing of soldiers executing a plan they had rehearsed until it lived in their bones. The orc lines were broken. The camp was dissolving into the grey wood in every direction. And in the center of the field, untouched by all of it, the horse stood still. The trained warhorse had stopped at the midpoint of the field and did not move. The goblin on its back had gone small and still in the saddle. The white flag flew above them both, steady in the cold air in the middle of the road, surrounded by the wreckage of everything Ricket had counted and planned and provisioned and gotten wrong. He looked at the flag. He looked at the tied hands. The white flag was not a message from the humans. They had not sent a rider to say we surrender. They had sent a goblin out with the white flag to say something else entirely. We have had enough. It is time you surrender. Allow us to help you with that decision. Rickett stood on the hill for a long time. Out of habit, he reached into his vest and drew out the thin ledger. He opened it to the last page. He held the quill above the paper and waited for the numbers to come. They did not. He closed the ledger and let it fall into the mud. It landed without a sound, and he walked into the grey wood and did not look back at it. You could count every arrow they loosed, every lamp they lit, every ration they ate, and still know nothing about them. The numbers were real. The humans were something else entirely.